Hello, my name is John Benner and I am an Animal Science Extension Agent in Augusta County, Virginia. This video series, Summer Stockpiling for Late Summer Grazing, is a collaboration between Augusta Crops Agent Matt Boer and myself to define and cover the management principles of summer stockpiling tall fescue to extend the grazing season and reduce cow herd feeding costs. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you enjoy our video series. Tall fescue is the most prominent forage in much of the southeastern United States. Most beef cattle producers within this region are familiar with the management practice of stockpiling tall fescue for winter grazing. As tall fescue is a cool season forage, its natural growth curve lends itself to being very productive in the cooler months of the spring and fall of the year. Stockpiling is the process of setting aside designated pastures, preferably with a high percentage of tall fescue, and not grazing them for a predetermined period to allow forage growth to accumulate. This accumulated growth can then be grazed, preferably at a time when grass productivity in other pastures is low. Fall stockpiling with and without a fall nitrogen application has been a successful part of Virginia grazing systems for many years. Fall stockpiled fescue, especially when strip grazed, is very effective in lengthening the grazing season, which in turn reduces winter feeding costs. As an example, here are estimated hay feeding and stockpiled fescue grazing costs from the cow herd at the Shenandoah Valley Agricultural Research and Extension Center. Estimated costs of feeding hay are $1.73 per cow per day, while costs of grazing stockpiled fescue are 36 cents per cow per day, with total savings of $1.37 per cow per day for each day grazed versus feeding hay. Fall stockpiling has been an important part of Virginia beef production for many years. However, it can be often challenging to do. Despite an overabundance of spring and summer pasture, much of Virginia is often dry in the late summer and early fall, limiting the acreage that can be set aside for stockpiling. Summer stockpiling is a novel management system that can help overcome these challenges. Summer stockpiling involves setting aside acreage from hay harvest, bush hogging, and grazing in order to accumulate growth during the spring and summer months. Livestock are then introduced onto the summer stockpile around mid-August. The summer stockpile can then be grazed during the late summer and early fall as a tool to facilitate fall stockpiling on other acreage. This system saves producers time and money by enabling them to capture spring and summer pasture growth without making hay, while simultaneously extending the grazing season to reduce winter feed costs. Here is Shenandoah Valley AREC Superintendent David Fisk to explain how the summer stockpile management practice was developed.
Well, summer stockpiling basically evolved from a situation where we had an overabundance of forage in the spring, and usually in the fall when we set aside acreage to apply fertilizer for winter stockpiling, we typically ran out of grass and had to feed hay usually in the fall. And so the whole idea came about where we would save some of that excess forage in the spring, allow it to accumulate all spring and summer, and then graze it in the fall when we usually ran out of forage and had to feed hay. So that's how the whole concept came about.
It challenges the assumption that letting a pasture rest that long without harvesting the forage would result in only mature grass that cattle would find unpalatable. However, a substantial amount of undergrowth and fresh grass makes up the majority of the dry matter in the sward. This undergrowth provides dense, fresh forage that would be ideal for such grazing groupings as fall calving cow-calf pairs. So let's take a look at what the actual stockpiled paddock looks like. Taking a closer look, we can see that there's, yes, a lot of dead material. You do have a lot of mature seed heads that have dried out. Pairs to kind of cover and make up a good portion of the canopy. But when you look a little bit closer, you can really see a lot of green tissue and kind of combing up some of the sward here. There's a lot of undergrowth that really provides the nutrient density that we see in this system. We did 2 treatments, on our stockpiled pastures. One being 50 pounds of nitrogen. The other was a control treatment. We didn't find any significant difference between the 2 of them in terms of total dry matter yield or nutrient densities. Looking at the actual yield, depending on where you measure, you get around 2.5 to 4 dry matter tons per acre, with the total digestible nutrients being approximately 55% and crude protein tested around 10%. Overall, in addition to that, you see a lot of just capture and total biomass, which really allows for the dew and just any moisture that is outlaid here to be captured and soaked up by that by the actual soil. Looking at all this top growth and top cover you have, you can imagine a root system being just as dense underneath. So similar to what we do with fall stockpiling, where we utilize strip grazing systems to increase the utilization of any fall stockpiled fescue grass, we can use similar methods with a summer stockpile, in which we're forcing a higher concentration of cattle on a smaller amount of acreage to really force them to go through and select anything that's palatable and nutritious. And so, looking here at the 2 treatments that we have, we're standing in the 0-in treatment right now. You can definitely, if you pan around, you can see a lot of just total biomass available. Given proper and recommended strip grazing techniques of giving them maybe about a 15 to a 20 foot swath, at least in this setting, and these size paddocks, you can really get to a very good utilization. As you look behind me, we have a group of fall calving cows that have really cleaned up this stockpile very well. If you kind of look in the pasture I'm standing in, essentially everything over there at one time before we turned in these cows looked like the way it does over here. And so we really do recommend strip grazing using this system, as you do really increase that utilization. You'd expect they'd trample a lot of grass, even on the undergrowth if they didn't strip graze it, but really stacking up and increasing that stocking rate for more of a strip grazing setting is definitely the way to go when grazing the summer stockpile.